All right, so good morning, everyone. So let's welcome to the second session. It's a panel where we're going to talk about the promises and applications of Web 3.0, empowerment of the citizen and decentralization for the society. So my name is Kaiwen Zhang. I'm an associate professor at ETS, so École de Technologie Supérieure here in Montreal. Okay, so let me first introduce our three panelists for today. So first we'll start with Victoria Lemieux, so full professor at the School of Information and lead of the Blockchain Research Cluster, Blockchain at UBC at the University of British Columbia. So Victoria L. Lemieux is a professor of archival science at the University of British Columbia School of Information. She's also founder of Blockchain at UBC, the University of British Columbia Blockchain Research and Education Cluster. She's also a Sauder School of Business Distinguished Scholar and Faculty Associate at the Institute of Computing, Information and Cognitive Systems at UBC. Her interests include risk to the availability of trustworthy records through an archival theoretic lens, particularly in blockchain record systems, keeping systems, and how these risks impact upon transparency, financial stability, public accountability, and human rights. Between 2014 and 2016, Dr. Lemieux has won several awards for her research and contribution to the field of archives, records management, and cybersecurity, including receiving a 2015 Emmett Leahy Award for contribution to the field of record management, 2015 World Bank Big Data Innovation Award, and 2020 Blockchain Ecosystem Leadership Award, and recognition as one of Canada's top 20 women in cybersecurity in 2020 by IT World. Her latest publications include Building Decentralized Trust, Multidisciplinary Perspectives on the Design of Blockchain and Distributed Ledgers, published at Springer 2021, and Searching for Trust, Blockchain in an Age of Disinformation, Cambridge University Press 2022. So please welcome Dr. Victoria Lemieux. Okay. Yeah, so please sit. We'll do your slide later. Okay. Yeah. I'll introduce everyone first. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so second panelist we have today is Mohammad Hamdaqa. So he's an assistant professor at Polytechnique Montréal, leading the Software and Emerging Technologies Lab in the Department of Computer and Software Engineering. Additionally, he serves as adjunct professor at Reykjavik University in Iceland. Hamdaqa co-founded the Center for Financial Technology at Reykjavik University, Iceland, dedicated to advancing interdisciplinary research on financial technologies. The center investigates the potential impacts of technology and regulatory shift on financial services and the overall financial systems. Dr. Hamdaqa is an active member of the Icelandic Blockchain Foundation and the Quebec Software Engineering and Machine Learning Group. He's also a member of IEEE Computer Society and the Association for Computer Machinery, ACM. Hamdaqa's primary research interest lies in exploring the power of model abstraction, automation, and analysis to derive the development of intelligent and trustworthy systems. He's particularly focused on leveraging machine learning and generative AI in conjunction with models to redefine how trustworthy software systems are conceptualized, ultimately enabling software development for citizen developers through accessible, user-friendly, and low-code platforms. Hamdaqa has made significant contributions to enhancing smart contract development tools and technologies. This includes his award-winning frameworks, iContractML and iContractBot, designed for low-code smart contract development. Moreover, his lab is leading the development of automated auditing approaches that aim to augment the auditor's intelligence by offering valuable support through audit suggestion and leveraging innovative methods like code similarity, code transformation to enhance the detection and documentation of security issues in smart contracts. So please welcome Dr. Mohammad Hamdaqa. All right, so last but not least, we have Jean-Luc Pellerin, president and co-founder of Web3 Montreal. So Jean-Luc Pellerin is the co-founder and president of Web3 Montreal, the co-founder and COO of the Dunes Agency, and the co-founder of the BDT Investment Fund. He holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from l'École de Technologie Supérieure. His professional experience is broad and includes research and development, board advisory, project management, product management, business analysis, business development, sector and regional economic development, board advisory, financing and fundraising, team building, international relations, business intelligence, community organizer, event planning, strategic consulting for public and private companies and nonprofits, public speaking, and many more skills. His sector experience is also diverse and span blockchain, digital assets, agribusinesses, national and foreign militaries, engineering and infrastructures, such as seaways, civil and military installations, public spaces, water treatment and roadways, digital marketing, events, finance and venture capital, consulting, and more. So please welcome Jean-Luc Pellerin. Okay, so the structure of the panel today. So first we'll have some opening statements from everyone. And after that we'll go into a in-depth panel discussion, and we'll finally conclude with the Q&A session. Okay, so first I'd like to invite each person individually to give their opening statement. So starting with Dr. Victoria Lemieux, please.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to be here. When I saw the invitation from the Cyber Justice Lab, I couldn't resist, because at a time when I see so many cyber injustices and the potential for so many cyber injustices, a conversation about cyber justice is just what we need, particularly at this moment in time when we're transitioning from the Web 1, Web 2 now. So many people characterize these as the read web, the read-write web, and now Web 3, which is sometimes characterized as the read-write-own web. So we now have the ability to transform through cryptographic methods that Jeremy mentioned in his talk, transform what was once the data that we could read-write into something we can tokenize and we can claim ownership of. And then with this is the notion of Web 3 also as the web of trust, because through these processes as well, the idea is that we should be able to assert ownership of these assets, and including our own identity. So this is the idea that I'm portraying in this slide here. And I would say that, even Tim Berners-Lee, who gave birth, if you can say, to the idea of the web, has decried what has happened in Web 1 and Web 2. And so we're now looking at ideas that, were ideas expressed back in 1992. Here I have a quote. You can see here from Phil Zimmerman talking about this notion of how individuals can claim ownership of their own identities. So this ownership idea of a self-sovereign identity is not new, as we can see, but it is an idea that the technologies of Web 3 are able to potentially bring into being now for us and give us more independence and ownership. So this is the ideal. Whether that ideal can unfold, well, we'll see. So the other element of the slide there is a project that I've been working on since 2018 in my lab. And it started with health records, working with a company that does AI-based health intelligence research. And they approached me and they said, well, we have a lot of sensitive information about healthcare. And indeed they did. And so we started to look at how could we use the new blockchain technology to support what they wanted to do, to protect this information, to enable the information to be shared and so on in a privacy-preserving way. So it started with the insight that in this world of Web 3, the world we now live in, the space between what is so-called real or physical and the digital is becoming less and less. It's becoming conflated, it's becoming mixed. So now even our physical bodies are transformed into digital data. And we are, in fact, our data in a very concrete way. And so then when I looked at what kind of technology we should use to build this blockchain solution that this company was asking us to build, it started with the inspiration that if we are our data, we should control that data, especially if that data is physically us, because not to control it is to accept that anybody can do anything with our bodies. We wouldn't accept that, right? We wouldn't, in a physical way. We don't accept that anybody can just do anything they like with our bodies, but somehow we've come to accept that with our data. So it starts by giving people power back, control over their data as their own embodiment in this digital age. So I can talk more about that, but those thoughts I'll open my presentation with, maybe to provoke some conversation later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lemieux. So next, maybe Dr. Hamdaqa, would you like to say something? Oh, something happened with the. Okay. All right.
Have the slides?
Yeah, your slide
Yeah.
will be appearing soon.
Okay, well, thank you for having me here today. Well, if I ask you here, what's Web3, can you raise your hand? Anyone knows what Web3? Well, I will say, get out of here. So for me, I don't know what Web3, even though I work in technologies that's related to Web3, because it's an architecture, it's a philosophy, it's as in any emerging technology, it's philosophy and architecture that emerging and continuously evolving. And today we see how it's evolved over time, and we did not reach the stability level yet to say we know what's Web3. So starting from, I think, what Dr. Lemieux also mentioned about decentralization and this vision of Tim Berners-Lee of having decentralized web at that time with semantic web technology, and also today reaping on the benefits of the underlying platform of blockchain and distributed ledger technologies. This provide foundation for what we talk today about and we see and realize as what we see as Web3. But there is also these emerging features that we start seeing how it start affecting how we see Web3. For example, we talked about read-only, read-write and execute, some people say, for Web3. But also now with generative AI, we can communicate with machines, and machines can generate new data. So generative AI is part of Web3 and will be essential part of Web3. Where this data also, if it's generated, then we need to be able to trace this data. If we're living in system where we are part of it, so this is part of also of Web3, that the person or the user will be part of this network that we have. So being part of this network that we have, this include, of course, sensors being connected to the network to collect data about us. It also include people talk about virtual reality and metaverse concepts, but it's more than this. Like we have today, brain-computer interfaces. We can maybe read the intention of the user. So all this will affect the way that we deal with the web and how we will consume content on the web. It's also put more emphasis on the need for traceability. If you're living in multiverse environment where you can have multiple identities, so how can I trace back to the original identity? How can I trace back to the what were the original news, how these original news formed, and how can I trace back to all data that have been created? So this is also one of the key pillars of what Web3 is, which is distributed identity and being able to control the data that we have, being able to have control over what part of data we can share and how to trace it back. But there is also many missing components that we will investigate and we will see as we go. We will see that all the time we will hope to put emphasis on putting restrictions on not losing the control by going to any solutions that provide centralization. So, but we will see this concept emerging, and we'll be happy to live this evolution of this architecture. So we can discuss this more, of course, during this panel.
Thank Hamdaqa. So, Mr. Pellerin, would you like to say a few words? Thank you.
Thank you, Kaiwen. And thank you, everybody, for being here today. So what I do when it comes to Web3, I started Web3 Montreal. It's an organization that is going on 2 years now because we saw a need for people to understand this a bit more. As my colleague here just mentioned, there is a problem with understanding Web3 because it's still in the process of being defined. If you go on Wikipedia, and the first chapter of the Wikipedia description of Web3 is that it's still being defined. It doesn't have like a absolute definition that is accepted unilaterally across the world. However, a lot of people have used this term to define where we want to be going with this new technology, this new way of doing things, I should say. Web3 is not a technology, however, it does use many technologies, as my colleague just said, specifically blockchain, which is the architecture, if you will, that we use. We're going to be using a lot more AI, machine learning. When it comes to the metaverse, it's sort of this representation of the ideals of Web3 and is also an amalgam of technology. So what we do at Web3 Montreal is we try to communicate this in more understandable terms. We try to bring people together working in the space. We do a lot of networking events for entrepreneurs, developers, designers, and people who want to just know more about the space and meet people here in the space. We help people find jobs in the blockchain industry and in Web3 in a broader sense. And we do a lot of educational events every month at the Notman House to talk about different subjects. And funny enough, the one we had last week was about cybersecurity in Web3. And it was a very tedious conversation where the terms like zero knowledge were used many times, and a dictionary full of privacy-related terms. So following this, if some of you are here in Montreal, I know we have international guests here right now, but for the people that are online, if some of you are in Montreal and you want to keep the conversation going and want to learn a bit more about Web3, I'd invite you to go on our website for web3montreal.ca and start joining some of our events and meet the people who are actively pushing this space forward here in Montreal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pellerin. So we'll move on to the panel right in front on these sofas here. So I'll bring this. It's okay here? I assume it's okay. All right, so I will sit down myself. Okay, great. All right, so let's start with the panel proper. So this morning we heard a great talk from Dr. Jeremy Clark. He gave a very extensive history and definition of Web3, but again, still a nebulous term. So I'd like to hear from each of you what's your, let's say, personal interpretation, but also what you think is the current public perception of Web3. Maybe start with Mr. Pellerin, since you named your your organization after Web3, so you must have a strong opinion about this.
Yes, definitely. So Web3, I'll start with the public-facing side of Web3. So it is very much perceived as a sort of marketing effort on the crypto blockchain industry to try and get more normalization. After burning through the cryptocurrency term and then the blockchain term and having countries and banking authorities just ban anything with the name crypto or blockchain in it, the space sort of needed this new term to be able to continue what they were working on and push forward, hence Web3. However, Web3 is a term that was officially coined by Gavin Wood, one of the co-founders of Ethereum, and also now started the Web3 Foundation in order to sort of set the ground, the guidelines of what Web3 is and where we should be going with this. Again, pulling up the Wikipedia article, it's been sort of used variously by the VC industry. A lot of venture capitalists were abusing the term Web3, creating a lot of hype around Web3 companies, Web3 startups, It was even said that Andreessen Horowitz was behind the coinage of the term Web3 to sort of influence the investment into that. So that's sort of the public-facing side. A lot of people seeing it as just another hype, another industry in which VC wanted to get interested and money in. If we bring it to why I started Web3 Montreal and why we use that term, a bit in also that sense to have a term that was accepted and loved by all. And also a way to bring all of the different aspects of people working together, because within the crypto space there are some factions. So you have the Bitcoin maximalists who believe that Bitcoin is the only one and nothing else exists and nothing else is true. Then you have other maximalists and other types of chains and other type ways of doing things. I see Web3 as a term that really just brings people together to work on this new web, regardless of the blockchain that you use, regardless of the technologies, regardless of what you may think or say. Just to bring people together to have an interesting and intelligent conversation to bring about this this new way of doing things. And for me, that's what WAGMI said. Web3, sorry. For those who aren't familiar with WAGMI, it's another term on crypto Twitter that's been used a lot. It means we're all going to make it, and I find that sort of is the essence, if you will, of Web3. Is that it's a way for everybody to come together on the web and have potentially equal rights, equal say, have access to their data, have access to privacy. It's sort of like the utopia of what the internet should have been. And as you were saying earlier, that Tim Berners-Lee was commenting on the faults and the mistakes of Web 1 and Web 2. I think Web 3 is sort of the redeeming of all of that, and this is our chance to make things right.
Yeah. Victoria Lemieux, would you like to
Yeah. Yes, as I said, it is. So whether we'll be redeemed or not, we'll see. Because, as Jean-Luc mentioned, the term is already being conscripted by, certain actors, and there are initiatives afoot that, don't necessarily represent the kinds of values that, might trace back to the issues that Tim Berners-Lee mentioned, or indeed, Phil Zimmerman, or, Eric Hughes in the Cyberpunk Manifesto. There's a long tradition of calling out some of the things that have happened, and Web3 promises a potential, utopian vision of what we could maybe rebuild as the next generation internet, is the way it's being defined and architected in Europe, for example, where I spent last year on sabbatical, observing some of the things that are happening in that sphere of the world, the web of trust, all of these dreams that we have. Will we make them a reality, or will we just create, another version of a dystopian reality? I don't know. I have hope that we might, actually pay attention this time.
You mentioned the web of trust several times. Could you explain to the audience what you mean by web of trust?
So the idea is that with Web 1 and Web 2, we couldn't, it's the old saw about, on the internet nobody knows you're a dog. So identity was hidden, uncertain. We couldn't necessarily interact with each other and have a trust that the person on the other end of that transaction was who they said they were, we could trust them to do what they said they would do. And so the web of trust is this idea of bringing the capability to, the identity of the individual, so that we can trust that the person we're interacting with is that person, that the interactions we have with them, if they give us cryptocurrency, that, they haven't double spent that cryptocurrency, all of those kinds of concepts. And the idea of also that the identity that I have is an identity that I own, that isn't owned by Facebook or Google or another, third party, that I actually have possession of my own identity and, can assert it and use it in these transactions, as I would in, like the physical world in some ways. I mean, although our identity is supported in the nation-state context by a lot of, state power
Mhm.
and issuance of identity documents and so on. So it's not quite as simple as that, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Hamdaqa, would you like to add something about Web3?
Well, I like the concept of web of trust. I think trust is one of the quality attributes, let's say, that were very difficult through the years to be realized or implemented. And we start seeing initial implementations of trust through the concept of immutability with the emerging of blockchain and the digital ledger technologies. But this is, of course, the beginning of implementing trust. So the first thing I think when we talk about technologies such as Web3, I think it's very important not to tie ourselves to the technology itself, but to the concepts that this technology promises. So what we want from this technology, how it can help us. So we want to be able to trust the web, trust the information in the web, be able to trace information to its origin, be able to have identity that we can control, be able to have control of our privacy and the data that we share. So all these are concepts that are very important to be there, and their implementation is, I think, not the important part. We will see different patterns for implementing this. We see like this Web3, we start seeing some architectural styles, I call them, to implement the Web3. But there will be many implementations, such as in 5G, for example. There is no actual technology for 5G, but there is definitions for 5G. The same is for Web3, I think, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hamdaqa. So you painted a fairly utopic vision of Web3 as a very unifying concept here. I'd like to know today, are there any concrete use cases of application of this technology or Web3? Do you have any use cases? Earlier you mentioned about your project in health records, for example. So could you describe more what is the kind of use case you've seen that uses this kind of technology?
Yeah, so maybe a little bit more on that project. So in the context of health record keeping, the idea is that instead of the hospitals or in this case a health intelligence company or whatever the case may be, others owning or controlling your health data. Because in this country, it's a kind of a fraught situation. We're supposed to technically own our health data, but we don't possess it. Mm-hmm. So in essence, we have no control over it. The hospital has it, or the doctor's office, and so on. So the idea is to issue credentials to individuals. In this case, we worked with a health intelligence company that issued biomarkers. So they take your blood samples, convert it into data in the form of measurable biomarkers, and that would be issued to individuals as tokens. And so those tokens, through using Hyperledger Indy Aries, which is a self-sovereign identity-based, blockchain-based protocol, could be shared through using decentralized identifiers and zero-knowledge proof cryptography to, say, well, yes, my biomarker is at a particular measure, or I have these biomarkers in a corpus of data, whatever the question is, without revealing necessarily the identity or other aspects of the data, parameters of the data that the individual didn't want to reveal. So we're now taking that technology and we're using it to enable many digital innovators who have really not had easy tools to give people granular control to consent to the sharing of their data, an easy interface, an easy tool to do it, an API tool. And the idea is to basically enable digital innovators to easily give people control over their data and to say, yes, I agree to the sharing of this data, to the using of this data in, for example, to build this AI model, right? And for people also to easily and in a very granular way say, but I'm only going to allow it for this period of time, for this particular model, for this particular purpose. And so that's what we're really trying to do. We're open sourcing this, and we're aiming to create a vibrant, innovative ecosystem of digital innovators who are using this tool to basically say, you know, like, now you can actually comply with this requirement in a lot of the emerging legislation that is around, you know, granular, specific, and time-bound consent. No more, you know, no more reason why you can't help people comply. You know, you can't comply, and you can't help people to achieve this. So that's one use case. With the BC government, another project that we're working on is the Mines Digital Trust project, which is using the same technology to actually help mining companies prove that they have adhered to sustainability, carbon capture, carbon sustainability, and environmental sustainability requirements of the government. So exactly the same, they get these tokenized digital credentials, and then they're able to present a proof when they're requested. And this goes into a larger carbon accounting type of a system. And finally, another project that we've been working on is with a digital arts group, 221A, and this is around using NFTs, artists, how they're creating NFT-based art, and using NFTs to actually empower artists to be able to be creative using this technology, but also benefit financially on an ongoing basis through this process of tokenization, where the tokens can be traded, yes, but a portion, a fraction of the value can come back to the artist, you know, rather than the current art market where the artist may not realize, you know, in future sales some of the increases in value of their artwork. So there's many different ways that 221A are playing with this technology. That's just, you know, sort of one way that they're doing it. So those are three kind of examples we're working on.
You've mentioned, thank you, you mentioned in the first two systems you're using Hyperledger Indy or Ares. If I'm not mistaken, this system is typically used in a permission context, in a closed environment, let's say. Could you maybe explain to the audience what's the difference between a permission blockchain and a permissionless blockchain like Bitcoin or Ethereum, and in your case, why you think it's appropriate to use Hyperledger?
Yeah. So so the difference between a permissioned and a permissionless is, you know, in one you are seeking permission, so you need some kind of an identity to actually record your transactions, you know, on a blockchain or use the blockchain. In a permissionless, the participants in the blockchain ecosystem can come and go. Typically, you don't require identity. So, and you can have public or private versions of both. Why I think that permissioned is Hyperledger in the Ares is useful in this particular use case is because it is a self-sovereign identity-based project. So in no way, shape, or form are the transactions recorded on the blockchain. The blockchain is used as a decentralized public key infrastructure to set up the cryptographic mechanisms for two peers to communicate with each other using a trusted channel. So nothing is recorded on a blockchain in this particular. You're simply using public key infrastructure, and in this case, you can use, you know, any kind of they call it register or ledger that your solution resolves to. You're not necessarily wedded to a particular blockchain, nor do you necessarily even have to use blockchain for your distributed public key infrastructure, although the security properties of blockchain offer you much more safety and security if you do. So that's why, in this particular case, it's privacy preserving. No transactions are recorded on the blockchain. That's a key difference between Hyperledger in the Ares and other self-sovereign identity-based blockchains from the kinds of blockchains that we might think about, Ethereum, you know, Bitcoin, Zcash, where transactions are actually recorded to a blockchain.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lemieux. So we've heard about government, use cases in government, in the healthcare. This morning, DeFi. We also talked about CBDC. Do you have other use cases you'd like to bring forward, Mr. Pellerin?
Yes, definitely. So I have a few that I personally find more interesting than others, but the main theme that I'm seeing across different channels that are being used is empowerment. So empowerment of individuals through ownership, through liberty, through freedom. A few examples of that in El Salvador, where I'm pretty sure it's the first and only country to make Bitcoin the standard currency in the country. A country that has been historically dependent on remittances. I think it's, don't quote me on these numbers, but something in the 30, 40, 50% of the country's GDP coming from remittances. For those in the audience who might not know what a remittance is, it's when a usually poorer country sends a lot of its citizens across the world to work in more interesting countries and economies, and a lot of that money is being sent back to the country to help friends, family, and just their survival of their friends and family. And to the tune of tens of billions of dollars being sent to the country through remittances. And traditionally how remittances have been sent is through companies like Western Union that take upwards of 30% of that. So when you have a $10 billion remittance a year coming to your country and another company is taking $3 billion of that remittance to facilitate the transaction, that's life-changing money for an economy. So now that they're all in Bitcoin, that $3 billion bill for the remittance is now $30 or pennies on the dollar, fractions of a penny on the dollar, because you can send large amounts of Bitcoin for relatively no money. So that's just a lot more money going into the country that can be used by the citizens, for the citizens, which empowers them to do much more. So say what we will about the government in place in El Salvador, but I find that that's a very interesting use case, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they're going to be able to push this forward and to see how that country is going to evolve in the next few years. I know there's a lot of Canadians over there, a lot of Americans flooding into the country for that particular purpose, to try and push that forward. Another area, so I'm looking forward to seeing other countries, specifically poor countries that usually have the choice to default or be saved by the IMF, and the IMF coming in with like very hard terms, sometimes not to the benefit of the country, usually in order to just benefit the US dollar and whatnot. So faced with that choice, El Salvador decided to go with Bitcoin instead of following the IMF, and up until now it seems to be paying off, so time will tell. Another thing, we mentioned NFTs. I really like how NFTs are empowering artists, empowering not only artists but gamers as well. So one thing that I spend a lot of time looking at is Web3 gaming. The main concept behind that is that gaming in general is the #1 media expenditure across the world. It's like in the hundreds of billions of dollars across the globe being spent on in-game purchases, specifically in that golden tranche of 15 to 30-year-olds that every company wants to market to. They're the ones spending the most in gaming. And the thing is, all of that money is basically wasted. I mean, they're buying skins, they're buying things that they can't necessarily transact, they can't necessarily resell, they can't necessarily do anything with this skin besides flaunt it for a game or two and then want to buy the next skin the week later. And if all of these skins or in-game items or all these assets that aren't really assets because they're not tradable, you can't do anything with them, if they become assets through NFTs, now you're empowering the gamer to actually hold assets, to transact these assets, potentially make money by gaming, and now you're creating a whole new industry for people that would want to live through their gaming, which I know is the dream of a lot of 15-year-olds, specifically me. I would have loved to be a full-time gamer. But yeah, this is unlocking potentially a whole new industry, a whole new thing that we already know hundreds of billions of dollars are going into. And specifically here in Montreal, where we're one of the top 5 producers of video games through EA, Ubisoft, and all the other game developers here in Montreal, we already have that pool of talent of designers and game creators. And I'm helping to build that pool of talent for Web3 and blockchain developers. So I see Montreal being the Silicon Valley of Web3 gaming in the years to come. And then the third one that I had, and the last thought on NFTs, for those who are in Montreal, I know you're from BC, right? Or from Vancouver. If you have a chance to go to the Zero X Society Museum, it's the first NFT gallery in Canada, one of the first in the world. They're backed by Super Rare. They're in the New City Gas area. So if ever you have the chance to go and see that, pretty interesting to see artists put their art on these screens. You're able to purchase the art directly from the screen, which like you can't do in a museum necessarily. So I find that very interesting. And then the third level of empowerment that I wanted to dive into, I got lost with NFTs and cryptocurrencies. But yes, you touched on carbon credits and just the environment in general. So I'm personally working on two different projects touching on using blockchain to track carbon credits, because for those who don't know or haven't had the pleasure to dive into the carbon credit economy, it is, pardon my French, a shit show. It's a very, very touchy subject. A lot of people think that carbon credits are going to save the world and it's the best way to track carbon or offset carbon and whatnot, but when you have the leading authority that's tracking the validity of or accounting the validity of carbon credits, they're called Vera, have like 70% of the carbon credits, again don't quote me on my numbers, but a large portion of the carbon credits that they administered or vouched for be proven to be basically a scam or fraudulent or like just not real carbon credits. Like how do you trust this? How do you make sure that we can actually, because carbon credits as a system, as a whole, can help. Like it is something that we definitely need to, and like all the governments of the world are counting on carbon credits to offset their carbon by 2050. So if we can't trust these carbon credits, how are we going to be able to use them to actually do what we're supposed to do with them? So blockchain comes in and really helps to solve for that. Now we just need to create the market and the economy for that and get people to buy them and trade them. Because again, in the carbon credit system, you have the voluntary carbon market and you have the non-voluntary carbon market, and those are two very different markets that you have to solve for, but they all have that underlying problem of accountability and making sure that we can trust these carbon credits. So I had the chance to be at the Creative Destruction Lab last week, where this very interesting project was building a tool, like a physical tool to attach to wind farms, solar farms, and all of these other renewable energy systems, and immediately track from the source the carbon offset that these projects are having, and be able to mint them directly on site and account for them from there. So this is just one project amongst many, but these types of projects are fundamental to bring back trust into the system that has been proven to be pretty fraudulent.
Yeah. My understanding is, for example, in the European market for carbon credits, double spending is possible. So a credit that was generated in one country could be sold locally and then resold in another country, and there seems to be no entity or authority to verify that there was no double spending. And that's like one of the core mechanisms that blockchain is trying to prevent, is double spending.
And worse than double spending is double minting. So a lot of the carbon credits were doubly minted. So this forest owner could say like, oh yes, we only sold carbon credits, or we only generated carbon credits this time. But they're going to say that to Vera, but then they're going to say that to like Golden Standard and to all the other like tracking authorities that, oh yeah, we only minted these for you, but the same forest has been saved 5 times.
Yeah.
So like that's not how it's supposed to work.
Okay. All right. So Dr. Hamdaqa, you would like to add some use cases?
I think they covered many of the use cases, but I think two centralized elements of digital ledger technology is identity and ability to vote. So voting systems, we see a lot of voting systems or derived systems based on voting systems, such as, for example, building constitutions with shared, with people being part of creating the constitution. We see some projects related to this, philanthropic projects related to many NGOs try to use this. There's, for example, the Ukraine DAO and There is projects also related to food stamps and ability to track food stamps. So traceability also can help in a lot of projects. So I think if we look at the main components, like we can derive many ideas and the projects based on these key important elements. One of the things that I will reiterate on is trust. So if we have trust, we have digital assets, and if we have digital assets, the only thing that we need is game theoretic greedy approach for people to be able to build what we call value-added markets or circular economy, as we hear in many cases. So because I come from machine learning digital world, in the machine learning world, we need to be able to contribute data, curate data, then extract information and knowledge from this data. There is this open ocean protocol that enables you, for example, and used the ledger technology to be able to help different people contribute and share. So I can share the data, I get tokens for my data that I share. Then someone else curated the data and extract knowledge from the data. They take tokens from this, but they can pay also for the data that they use, and so on. Like, this is a circle that we can build many circular economies in such a way where we just need to think about the added value. This can be in sustainability aspects, or it can be in any topic that we may think of.
Can I just say something about Ocean Protocol? I do agree with you, that particular protocol and many similar like it have great potential for that circular economy, for sharing data and so on. But one of the things that my students and I found when we started to look at that protocol was that you would take health data, for example. That was one of the use cases, and you had all this data about an individual. The individual, it might be data even that the individual themselves possesses about themselves. And so the idea that they would, you tokenize the data, and then you could sell that. So it's a kind of an Ethereum-based system. So you would sell your token. Now, this to me gave rise to this problem that I mentioned previously about, well, when you sell your data like that, you're essentially selling yourself. and moreover, that selling of that data, you maybe sell it for a particular use case, like research, but then you have no control over that, because whoever you sell your token to, they can use your data for they can sell it again. Mm-hmm. So they profit from that. They can use it for whatever purpose, maybe not a purpose you agree with, right? Mm-hmm. So I think they have since resolved that in that particular Ocean Protocol. They understood then the need to have two different types of tokens. An ownership token where you actually, you control that token for the data, and then another token where you're maybe provisioning access to the data, and then some AI algorithm can compute in a trusted execution environment. But the point, without getting too much into the weeds on this, is this: that sometimes we think that these technologies are, what a fantastic idea, let's tokenize our data and sell it, as an NFT. But we don't think about, a problem that I have been thinking about, unauthorized secondary use. I call it the data double spend, where, you share, you consent to you give somebody consent to use your data, but then, they have access to your data, and you haven't consented to all the things they can subsequently do with your data. So I call that the data double spend. And we don't think about our data as, equivalent to our physical selves. Mm-hmm. And so we think about it just as being data, and then we allow all these things to happen with our data that create all kinds of moral dilemmas and problems, So I just wanted, because you mentioned specifically Ocean Protocol, I wanted, because I had done some research on it, to just kind of raise those issues.
Maybe for those who are not familiar, could you please explain what is Ocean Protocol, or what is their
Ocean Protocol, without, I don't want to pick on a particular protocol, but Ocean Protocol is an Ethereum-based system that is specifically for the sharing of data. Mm-hmm. And it works through tokenizing the data, and then it provides a tradable platform for the sharing of data, and it creates a market for that data through using artificial intelligence and so on. And so it's got, you know, it's a wonderful example of Web3 data sharing application. But, you know, when you start to think about all of these things that this wonderful data sharing application can do, you then have to think about, well, all the things that are kind of maybe could be problems with that, you know, when it comes to like tokenizing our health data, for example, and sharing it and you know, transforming our health data into a token and then selling that in an open market. Maybe some of that value comes back to us, but then what are we trading in return? You know, if we like trade our whole genetic makeup.
I think what you're describing reminds me a little bit of digital music, right? So someone could purchase an MP3 through a marketplace and then, you know, off-chain essentially copy it or share it with their friends, and there's no traceability for that part. So is this what you're describing here with the second reuse
the data,
of the data?
Exactly, the data double spend. And when it's music, well, that's, you know, that's maybe the person who doesn't, you know, doesn't benefit from that subsequent sale of the music. When we're talking about our health data, you know, things that, you know, data that actually represents us, that aren't the embodiment of ourselves in data, it becomes a little bit more serious what the implications of that could be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But this all depends, I think, on the way we implement the access and control. So it's implementation issues for this. But the good thing is that these movements are good movements because, I mean, giant companies, they're using our data for a long time and they don't even contribute anything to our data. At least here, there is some part of contribution to the data that you share. In 2016, 2017, we started a startup company. It died with days, called Gilded Tree. And the idea was to keep, to give contribution to the last, we call it the last generation of people contributing data. So for example, we all use Google Translate. And the Google Translate, the power of it is based on all the translated documents that have been harvested over the years. But what we contribute back to people who translate these documents manually at some point, we don't contribute anything. So having traceability to data is very, very important. First step towards giving back to the people that did the actual work before we send it to the machine learning and lose traceability completely. Because today, especially with large language model and these kind of advances, we lose traceability. Like this model, we don't know where it get the data from, and we don't know how it reasons about. So we just lose traceability completely. So yeah, giving back, I think, is very important. And I think this community is having this noble goal in the foundation, hopefully.
Recently, there's a trend in machine learning on explainable AI, right? So the ability to break this black box nature of AI that's not unpenetrable, not understandable, to make sure that we are able to trace each of these training steps. Do you see any integration of Web3 technologies for XAI?
Yeah, the integration currently is about making sure that, for example, today one of the biggest problems is that the generated data from AI, if it's fed back, it will degrade the quality of the models that trained. So we kind of go into a vicious circle. Now, being able to attribute data and its quality and put labels on it, which traceability and digital ledger technologies can provide this, can help. But now, tracing the data to the actual output is still, I think, a hard goal to reach. And unfortunately, there is no direct, or I don't know of direct solution for this so far. But people are trying different mechanisms, and there is some new kind of approach in modularity analysis that try to address this, but it's still, I think we're far from this.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think decentralized machine learning is another topic we could discuss a long time on. Okay, so maybe let's talk. So now we've seen some use cases. Maybe let's talk about some of the building blocks, right, for this Web3. So the first one I have here in my mind is decentralized identity, or another term we hear a lot, self-sovereign identity, SSI, or digital identity. So DIDs, and verifiable credentials, right, VC. So maybe Mohammed, could you maybe clarify what these terms mean?
Yeah.
What do you think is their role here?
Yeah, starting from decentralized identity, I think the first question is to ask, what is an identity? So the identity is perhaps everything, like your life, or all the events happen in your lifespan, creating an identity. So we see this, and of course the milestones that in this lifespan that can be in some way or another verified. So for example, taking having your PAC or like your master's degree and being able to verify that you have actually your master's degree. The closest you can see to the identity is your CV. We see recently this, and you maybe noticed this, that if you're using LinkedIn, they started verify that, well, your email has been verified. So this is kind of partial verification of the credentials that you have in your CV. Now the question is, in decentralized identity, can I be the sole owner of this identity? Can I control access to this identity? Can I share partial information through this for this identity? And I can give you examples for each case. For example, recently some colleague told me, well, are you part of this conference? I told him no. It's a kind of pediatric conference, which is. So I told him, no, I'm not part of this conference. He told me, but they refer, they put your name there. So I checked that, and my name was there on the page. So, well, I was not able to know that they used my information there. And my friend or my colleague has no ability to verify if this information were indeed correct. So do they get my consent to take, to be able to be there? So this is one of the fundamental concepts, which is consent of the data that you have, and being able to find the data and be able to trace it, and also provide the consent that it's used. Another use case that is very popular and can maybe explain this decentralized identity and the need of it. Well, we all go to different web pages, and some web pages have maybe age restriction limits. Social media have restriction limit for your kids. For example, if they're under 13, they have specific kind of access. Over 13, they have specific kind of access. Now, if normally when you share your data, or you share all the data, but do you want to share your kid location, name, all information, if all what they want is just the age? So maybe trying to provide partial access of the data is also another very important component that can be part of this, what we call decentralized identity. And this is the essence of decentralized identity. It's about providing consent, ability to provide partial access for the data when you want and when you need. And this can go even outside, I think, the Web and Web3 boundaries. For example, I can think of a scenario where you go to buy cigarettes and they want to verify your ID. Can I verify the ID using the picture and the age only? So I can scan something, see the picture and the age, and I don't need to know where this person lives, what's the name of this person, all the details of the person. So all these aspects, of course, has been, we start seeing the realization for this, that W3C have some schema for presenting the decentralized IDs, and provide some methods for creating them and updating them, and also have some techniques for ability to manage the control between the three main essential parties, which is the issuer of information, the owner of the information, and the verifiers or people that they will use and review these information.
Yeah, in fact, I would say for the age, it should be even more precise than that. Like you said, prove someone is under 13 or over 18. It shouldn't even be about revealing your age. It should be just revealing yes or no, I'm over 18 or under 13.
Yeah.
So there should be a proof of adulthood or proof of some childrenness, or I don't know what it's called, but that's not possible right now. But with verifiable credential, there maybe eventually we'll get there. Do you have something you would like to add?
I think that, that's a very, very good summary of, the capabilities of decentralized identification and verifiable credentials with zero knowledge proof cryptography, which the only other thing I would maybe mention with decentralized identities is that, it's what is the source of authority that the identity is derived from. So typically the way that this is being rolled out right now, we're not, the underlying identity, you might have a verifiable credential issued to you by the state authority. So still, like the BC government, for example, or, Canadian government or something like that. There's an idea where, particularly in some context where you're dealing with refugees, where you have failed states and people, like the authority of their identity, which would have previously been a state authority, the state authority is like gone, or, the documentation is unreliable. So in these contexts, and maybe, other contexts we can think about, we might need an identity that is formed by what Phil Zimmerman was talking about, where we have, attestation that, yes, I know you and I attest to your identity, and there's a network of attesters who can say, this Vicky is who she says she is. Vicky has this reputation. So now there are all kinds of different ways we have to think about how this can go bad. But the idea is that, where you don't have some natural authority, or you don't want to rely on that kind of an authority for the support of your identity, that there's this kind of network of relationships that you might be able to rely on. So that's another kind of aspect that is emerging in this digital decentralized identity space.
Okay. Mr. Pellerin, what's your views, and is this something you think we should strive for, the SSIs and the DID?
I mean, definitely. Considering that the last sign-off for anything implemented at a national level is the government, we can expect to not see anything concrete happen in the next few years. I mean, we're going to see a lot of different aspects of it, but having like a full digital identity with like everything you need to know and its implementation into society, like for the person at the convenience store that's going to check if you're allowed to buy cigarettes or not, like we're years away from this. But what we're seeing right now for the people in the space using wallets, working in DeFi or trading in DeFi and being a part of this blockchain ecosystem, we're seeing a lot of these identities or parts of their identities being implemented through wallets and depending on certain projects. Specifically, I'm thinking of one from here in Montreal that just raised recently, a project called Oamo, that's basically helping to bring, again in the theme of empowerment, bring power back to people in terms of their data that they give to these websites. So, I mean, if we look at the oligopoly of data harvesters that are Facebook, Google, Amazon, all these major corporations that thrive with our free data, well, that's sort of the crime of the century, right? Like they were able to build these multi-billion-dollar organizations with our data, with our data, and we got streaming services, we got better communication, we got a bunch out of it, but like tangibly, like what did the people get for their data being taken? Nothing. So OAMO comes and solves this. It gives people a sort of barrier to entry where they could pick and choose which data they make available and have a return on the type of data that they give. And companies, if they want to have your data, go through this platform and are able to get a better, more tangible data of the people that they actually want to target. This is just one example amongst many others, but I think that projects like this are really showing like the concreteness that could be had with these types of digital identities.
Yeah, so like you said, it's going to take many years before we get to where we want to be. That's why I wanted to make the distinction between just digital identity and decentralized identity. And I think currently there are projects in place like just simply replacing your driver's license or your insurance card with electronic form. So that's, I think, what at least at the provincial level, that's what we're seeing. I know also that, for example, Quebec is collaborating with the BC and Ontario on building a prototype for that. So how do we then achieve the next level where we make it fully decentralized, go beyond the digital identity? Because it's possible that they just build that and then they're satisfied, they see everyone's happy, it's more convenient not to have to carry the cards. How do you then convince them it has to be self-sovereign, it has to be decentralized?
Well, again, with this this idea of having the cards and the authorities that implement them, how many people in Canada wouldn't be able to show their digital identity because they don't have a phone? Like everybody here in the room has a phone. Everybody here has access to the internet, but there are still millions of Canadians that do not have a phone, that do not have access to the internet. Be it through poverty, be it through social implementations. There's a lot of people that just don't have access to this. So how do they participate in this new economy, this new way of doing things? How can we make this digital identity non-digital for people who are outside of this? I know it may seem like a fringe part of the population, but it's still a sizable part of the population that just don't have any identity right now, or that don't have access to identification infrastructure, or being able to go and get their identity and all that. So I think we have to solve for a bunch of different things, but specifically that's a question that, or it's a comment that I get a lot. People coming to me and saying like, okay, well CBDCs are great and all, but a lot of people don't have a phone, a lot of people don't have internet. How are they going to transact through CBDCs if they require cash, like they work with cash, like it's a cash business. How are they going to work with CBDCs if they don't have any type of technology related to it? So there's the sort of what's the term that somebody used? The caveman aspect. They're like even cavemen need to be involved into this new technology and this new way of doing things. How do we make it accessible to them?
Yeah, there is attempts to solve this. I think currently, well, whether this is legal, not legal, good or bad, this is another maybe discussion and debate. But as you know, maybe like you know OpenAI, all of you know OpenAI, all of you know maybe Sam Altman. He's known for the OpenAI model and ChatGPT. He has also a startup, or like not startup, but a company that called WordCoin, and part of it is Word ID, where they scan the iris and they link it directly to digital ID, and this is decentralized ID. So this may solve the problem of not having direct ID, or maybe you can have multiple biometric features that can be used. But it's also question I mean, is this centralized? Is this decentralized? And this is very difficult question also because this leads us to what we call the oracle problem, because at some point you need to take some information from the physical world and to digitize it. And in Iceland, they had this Kinetala, which is the ID number, for a long time now, and everything linked to it. So you go buy a fridge, you have, like, this is discounted from your tax directly because it's linked to your tax. You buy a car, you buy a house, you go to the doctor, everything is on your Kinetala. Is this good, bad? I mean, also, this is debatable because but this is kind of like digital centralized ID. Decentralized, you should be able to, or no one can have ownership of it but you, so it's
So please don't let WorldCoin come and scan your irises, people.
I think the bigger issue is that, you know, a lot of these projects that claim to be decentralized are not necessarily decentralized, and that, you know, that it's a a scam to harvest people's biometric data and to control that data in a similar fashion to the way that our data has been harvested by OpenAI and many other such projects that, you know, for these large language models. You know, but the thing is that, you know, that going back to the idea of identity here, and you ask the question, you know, how can we get to a truly decentralized identity? The thing is that, you know, relying on the nation state or, you know, government to want to decentralize identity and give, you know, like, and achieve truly self-sovereign identity is like, why? Why would they, it's not, they, no, why would they want to do
It's not
that,
in their
right?
interest.
It's not in their interest
Right.
to, you know, because their interested is, you know, that is the nation state, you know, and having, you know, the typical controls and so on, which, you know, for the most part, I think under most circumstances, we live in a country where that's, we are, you know, we have many advantages and we're happy with those institutions. Where that's not working is where you have like situations where the state infrastructure breaks down completely, and that's where we see the truly decentralized identities being around these networks of reputation, and that's where, you know, you could see that kind of innovation really actually taking shape. It will be, I think, like Jeremy was saying with CBDCs, where you'll have, like, it's not like cryptocurrencies will disappear and there will only be CBDCs or the only, you know, all of these. You'll have identity that is truly decentralized in some contexts, maybe like refugee contexts. You'll have identities that are based on decentralized technologies to a greater or lesser extent, which are kind of more in line with digital identities, where the source of the identity is coming from, you know, government. So we will have a complex kind of ecosystem of identity and money and so on. And that's why we have, you know, pay attention to where these different, let's say, patterns of technological implementation are being used, and whether that pattern is appropriate to that use case. It's not just like, oh, one size fits all.
Yeah, so it seems like it's really important to keep in mind that decentralization is not black and white, right? It's not binary. There's different degrees that can be achieved. And so what you're saying is, depending on the context, we would have to use the right set of technologies to achieve the right level of decentralization for that particular use case. Okay, thank you.
One thing that I hear a lot about when it comes to decentralization, you can have the most decentralized blockchain, you can have the most decentralized, most permissionless, like the utopia of Web3, if you will, but it's still going through AWS. It's still going through
Possibly, yes.
Microsoft or Google. Like, it's still going through central ISP, Internet Service for ISP. Yeah, sorry. So, or even in like the cloud infrastructure, like the physical infrastructure, like it's going through centralized authorities, whether you like it or not. So, like, how decentralized, like, can we actually be or become in this day and age? Do we have to create like a world, like a brand new cloud or brand new infrastructure? Like, at which point does the drop off happen? Like, where do we say, like, okay, this is the optimal decentralization? So
Okay.
we need to keep that in mind when building something that brings us to complete decentralization. There's still centralized points of access that we need to solve for.
Okay, so I'd like to talk a little bit about the next building block that I see here is decentralized autonomous organization, so DAO. So what are they? How do they operate? What can we do with them today? And what is the potential? Can they replace, for example, our current government with something like a DAO? Is that even possible? So maybe Mr. Pellerin, could you clarify what's a DAO?
I really like DAOs as an idea. As an implementation, that's a whole other story. There have been varying levels of success with DAOs across the world. I think you mentioned Ukraine DAO initially. That's one that I saw that really came together and solved for a problem in a specific moment in time and has been doing pretty good with what they're doing. There are other DAOs that have failed miserably. It's always the same when trying new things. But in essence, for those who are watching and for those in the room who do not know what a DAO is, so it's a decentralized autonomous organization, which basically is, if we want to bring it back to the real world, is like a company. So when you're starting a company, you have your board of advisors, you have your investors, you have all the different types of people in the company who have different voting rights or voting shares or whatnot. In a DAO, you don't necessarily have one, you don't have a president or you don't have necessarily like a board of directors or whatnot. Like everybody who buys into the DAO sort of comes in as an equal in the purest form. How that actually translates in the real world with real DAOs has varying levels of success. We've seen many of the DAOs be either taken over by VCs or taken over by actors who want to take over the DAO or whatnot. So there are varying levels of success, but in essence, it's this new way of collaborating together on certain projects or certain topics. So, say for example, for the Ukraine DAO, when at the onset of the war with Russia, massive amounts of money, supplies were needed to be sent to Ukraine, and going through the Red Cross or going through these more established organizations is very costly. I think the Red Cross is like the worst in terms of expenditure. Like every dollar sent to the Red Cross, I think 70 cents goes into operations. So like 30 cents actually makes it to the country. So when going through a DAO, like everybody contributing to the DAO, the money goes directly to where it's supposed to go. There's no middleman, if you will. And so they've been able to do great things for Ukraine. They've been able to get the funds to where they're needed, actually. In other areas, there's been a lot of investment DAOs where people get together, pool their resources together, and invest in things that they all collectively want to invest in. Say in the arts market, there's been a lot of NFT DAOs that have brought pools of money together in order to buy like these very expensive art pieces, but separate the cost towards 5,000, 10,000, 100,000 people. Same thing for real estate DAOs in New York. I know there's a few in Portugal as well, where lots of people get together to buy like massive pieces of real estate that were accessible to only like billionaires in the day. But now, if you're getting 100,000 or 200,000 people together, you could buy the Empire State Building. That's an example. And we're going to see that much more in the years to come with our crumbling infrastructure. We're going to need a lot of people to get together, 100,000, and fund the reconstruction of our shared collective infrastructure. And yeah, there's basically where I see this going in the next few years. I would see more and more companies being incorporated as DAOs, as being a way to go for like a cooperative or a non-profit organization. All these types of organizations should be incorporated as a DAO, or could be incorporated as a DAO.
Okay, thank you. You've presented DAO more, maybe I'm mistaken, as a crowdfunding tool to gather a lot of funds together to make a big investment. My question is, once it's acquired, once it's purchased, what does the DAO do at that point? How does it operate? What does it allow the different investors to do once they've made the acquisition?
So it is depending on which DAO and on which chain it operates, it's mostly like a voting or a staking mechanism.
Okay.
So depending on how many shares of the DAO you have, or your stake or your investment in the DAO, you have a varying number of votes. So it's depending on, again, which platform, which DAO, they all have different types of ways of organizing. But mostly it's the people in the DAO will come up with not a solution, but
Proposal?
a proposal.
Yeah.
And then people are going to vote on that proposal, and DAOs have like thousands of proposals. Some have thousands of proposals a day, some it's a week, some have just a few every year, depending on the size and the scope of the DAO. But it makes everything more open, more participatory. Like people can actually participate in it. So if you look at a country, like say if Canada were a DAO, everything that goes before the Senate or the House of Commons or anything that's voted in the government could potentially pass through our phone. So like somebody mentioned Amber Alerts earlier, we could get like a little pop-up or a little in-app message saying like, oh, Canada's voting on this law or that law or whatever today, and you could vote. Like you have one share as being one human in this country, you'd be able to vote on everything. So the government could be much more participatory, and I think that would help bring more people his attention towards politics, because it is appalling how many people know so little about politics and what happens behind closed doors, and it's a shame really. I think if everybody had a pop-up on their phone like asking them to vote in certain things, even if they're completely disinterested, at least they could voice their opinion and potentially be more opinionated to what's happening in their country. I think so few people are interested in politics and what's happening, especially in my age group. I find it I'm having a hard time finding people to discuss politics with.
My dear, they're just trying to survive.
I know.
They only have time for that these days. Anyway.
That's another issue. Like
We'll become Switzerland and have a plebiscite on everything. No,
but
I'm
it's
just teasing.
like the ideal democracy is that, right? Like everybody has a voice, everybody votes on everything, and ideally that's what we should strive for as humans, is being able to participate more in this economy, in this nation, and the way we do things. I think if more people had a voice, if more people could vote, but again, it comes down to the fact that if people had more time to think about these things instead of struggling paycheck to paycheck and trying to survive the increased mortgage rates and variable interests on their homes, we have more time to be able to talk about that.
All right, thank you, Jean-Luc. Would you like to add something on the topic of DAO? It's okay.
Well, I think being able to vote on things and be able to reach consensus is very noble, very noble cause to have the DAOs, and it's I think it's enabling technology to do that. So, how this is controlled also, I don't know what the policies are there to control these creating DAOs and managing them, but it's this is I think need to be discussed. I think in the next session.
All right.
Yeah, I would, definitely agree. The potential is there, but the rules will differ according to the different projects. As Jean-Luc was saying, it's really up to those who form the DAO to form the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And the rules can look very different depending on, how each group wants to operate. And so it's a great moment of experimentation.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great moment to observe how the different groups, the different permissioned, permissionless blockchains, and set up their rules of governance. They wouldn't necessarily call them DAOs in all cases, but it's about governance and how groups organize themselves, and observing what works, what doesn't work, is going to be fascinating.
Okay, thank you. So we've seen, we've started with the utopia now, and then we went kind of back to earth with concrete examples. Now I want to go deeper into the barriers or the negative aspects of the technology, barriers to adoption. What are the challenges? Whether it could be, related to trust and privacy. We've talked a lot, but maybe there's other things we've overlooked so far. Could be also technical challenges, perhaps. We talked about scalability and things like that this morning as well. Or it could even be resistance from the big tech, right, who dominated the Web 2.0, and now we want to take it away from them. So in your eyes, each of you, what is the biggest barrier to adoption, and what's the potential solution there? You want to start? Yeah.
As Vicky mentioned, I think the first one is time. Just people taking the time to get interested about this and learning about this, be more aware of this and just putting the time and effort into doing so. Another barrier to entry is a lexical one. So a lot of people have just a hard time understanding, forget Web 1, 2, or 3, just money in general, like the economy. Like we don't learn these things in school before we get to establishments like this. Like in primary school and high school, I think we have one economics class in like Sec 5 here in Quebec. We don't learn a lot about money in general. We learn it from our parents at home, who they themselves have not learned it. So we don't have a big knowledge when it comes to, we don't have a lot of knowledge when it comes to finances in general. So when you're coming into a space that's highly financial, I mean, crypto, blockchain, all of these technologies are used primarily for like, DeFi, financial aspects. If you don't even have like the basic knowledge of finance or the economy in general, and then you're going into or technology in general, and then you're coming into the space without that, it's almost impossible. Like I myself, when I started being interested in blockchain about like 8 years ago, found it very hard to just understand the core concepts. Like I had to buy books and read books, and even on Reddit there wasn't a lot of information. Like I had to sort of go digging and find information, and I had to go through that because I'm just naturally curious. But if you don't have that curiosity and you don't have that time and you don't have that understanding, then it's like a lost battle. Like it's very hard to understand these things. So we need to have better access to information, better access to Eli 5 information. Like I have this book for my kid. It's called Blockchain for Babies, and it explains like the blockchain for kids. And I always find it interesting reading it to him because like it does a good job of explaining just like what a blockchain is and what it's used for. So if we have like just like dumber information, something that's just entry level, more of that that helps people understand better the concepts, for them to then go and pursue their knowledge and explore the space even more. I think that helps. That's part of what we're trying to do with the organization, just create these spaces, safe spaces for people to come and learn about these things. Like there's no stupid questions in our events. Like we encourage people to ask stupid questions. I usually ask the first stupid question just to set the tone. But yeah, it's just curiosity, time, and just easier, more digestible information.
Okay, thank you. You wanna?
So in terms of barriers to Web3, like in terms of why people maybe don't adopt Web3, usability is one of the biggest issues in all the Web3 technologies stack. So creating wallet, putting your identity in the first place on the decentralized web, being able to do transactions, all these are technical aspects that we should, as technologists, abstract from the users. So if they will, like, I don't think users should see any of these technicalities. They should see same, I mean, they should work with the web in the same way, and all these technicalities should be abstracted. This is one main barrier, I think, or obstacles toward adoption. The other obstacle toward adoption is the bad kind of reputation with the first generation blockchain, whether in terms of energy consumption, or the bad reputation based on the losses that people remember when they had like bad events in their life, and if you invested in crypto and you lost some money there, you will have some also barriers like that. Well, this is bad thing that I should not be doing. Though, like the technology itself, I think it can bring a lot of advantages, and we should rethink this and looking at the new generations always of the technology. Always the first generation will be bad because there's many problems that need to be solved, but technology mature with time, and I think we should maybe give it a chance in this case. Yeah, I mean, other than that, there's many technological issues, but I think we can discuss later. eventually.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning the energy problem. Obviously it was long associated with Bitcoin, for example, and Ethereum when it was doing proof of work. But now, like you said, it's evolved, right? And we've even seen today a lot of discussion about using the technology for good, right, for sustainability. So we're maybe able to turn the image around on the environmental impact of blockchain. Okay, Dr. Lemieux, maybe would you like to have a final word today on the barriers?
Well, in terms of barriers, what I would like to mention that particularly I think affects Canada is, for whatever reason, at the policy level, we've been really slow to create a kind of a national strategy for blockchain technology, Web3 technology, where other nations have those, and they have had for some time. I think in terms of then what we're able to achieve as a nation and how we want to use, deploy, develop this technology and support, our researchers and those who are our entrepreneurs who are developing and seeking to deploy this technology. We really need to have the political will to support that in this country. So we had a parliamentary report come out not too long ago. Thank you, Eric, for passing that along. But I feel like the conversation is just beginning here, and getting that kind of political will and at the policy level supporting. Whereas when as I say, spent last year in Europe, that has already been in train for quite a long time, and you're seeing like very, very structured, systematic rolling out of next generation internet, and I just came from Abu Dhabi, the Emirates, where similarly, the strategies are much more advanced. So that's one barrier, I think, for all of us, collectively we need more focus at the policy level on this, and more political will.
And that was one of the reasons we lost Ethereum, right? Like when Ethereum was first being created over 10 years ago, it was out of University of Waterloo.
Yep.
Vitalik Buterin was conceptualizing this in Toronto. I went to the 10-year anniversary, was it last year, in the bar where they were ideating Ethereum, and the main reason they left Canada was regulatory, regulations not being there to be able to support that. Like what he was creating was basically illegal in Canada when he was doing it. So they moved everything to Switzerland because they had much more permission to do things over there. So I mean, how many other Ethereums do we have to lose before we wake up collectively and say like, just give the right soil and potting to this industry so that it can grow here in the right way. Mentioned something in Abu Dhabi, in Dubai. I have many friends that I've lost to Dubai because Dubai has basically created areas within Dubai where you could just go in and settle and found your company in Web3. Like they have Web3 neighborhoods where you can just go there, and like they're trying to create like Silicon Valleys of Web3 and different other industries. And it's like zero tax, come on in, everybody, we want all your technology, all your knowledge, all your everything, come on into Dubai. Like it's very easy to start a company over here, and you can do whatever you want basically. And so how do you compete with that? How many more people do we have to lose to Dubai, to the United States, to Switzerland? People like the Web3 brain drain is real, and we need to not necessarily attract everybody in the world because we've lost that battle, but at least retain what we have here, and put in the right regulations to enable that.
Okay. All right. Thanks everyone. So that concludes the panel today. Thank you for all our panelists for their discussion and their efforts. Okay. So we have a little bit of time left for a Q&A session. So if you have any questions, please. Over there.
Thanks. Thank you for this super interesting panel. I have a question about situations where you might want to have a third party intervene in decentralized platforms. And I'm thinking about situations such as the legal system where, for example, a company goes bankrupt or a company is sued, and then the assets have to be transferred to another party. And that's something, I suppose, desirable in many instances. So I was wondering, is there something equivalent in the blockchain where this could be interested, and is it possible to do that without losing the decentralization of the platform itself?
So, if I may, there's one use case, again, out of Montreal, a very young and talented student from McGill that had her venture finance while she was finishing her bachelor's here. I'm blanking on the name of the project, which, Bequest Finance, for those who want to look at it. Basically, you enter all the information of your wallets and all that, and you set, or you program what happens to your wallet in the case of your death, which is a huge problem in the crypto space in general. Like when you die and you didn't give your keys or your accesses to anybody, that crypto is lost forever, unless somebody like stumbles upon your seed phrase or whatnot. And with Bequest, what happens is that you can program everything initially. Like you can set who will represent you after your death or which company. You can set everything. So she built that for that purpose, for in the eventuality of death. But the same can be true for a company in the eventuality of foreclosure or faillite.
Bankruptcy?
Bankruptcy, sorry. And all these other things that could happen to a company. All of this can be pre-programmed within the wallet, within the blockchain, and just happen naturally.
Yeah. So from technical point of view, fallback behavior is possible through programming. So smart contracts, you can have fallback behavior in smart contracts, and this is easily to be programmed. But you need to be able to know ahead of time that you need to implement this fallback behavior, which requires some kind of, I think this is where one of the projects, for example, that I run is about auditing contracts. Part of auditing contracts is to be able to identify these issues and help people to identify that, well, they're lacking some logic in the control that they have. Now, there is also other aspects that technically can be done, which is circulating IDs, they call it. So there is some initiatives these days into how to be able to, well, this is not necessarily like related to the aspects of, well, but it's related to even losing your ID. So, I mean, we're talking about decentralized ID, but we assume that you have the cryptographic key for your ID, and what happens if you lost this ID? So there is technical solutions today that people are working on in order to be able to recover IDs, which is also, in other words, can be transfer assets in case of problems.
Yeah, I really don't have too much more to add to it. I agree with you. Like, when it comes to crypto assets, who holds the private key? Owns the crypto? I'm messing up the expression. So it's if you look for solutions. What's that?
Not your keys, not your crypto.
Not your keys, not your crypto. So if you look for solutions that are trying to solve for the problem of what happens if you lose your key, you can possibly look at solutions for, what would happen in the event of bankruptcy or.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for this great conference so far. I have a question for you, Ms. Lemieux. So you were talking about basically privacy and health data and how you can empower people with their own data because those data are themselves. So traditionally we are opposing the culture from the, I would say, US culture versus continental culture, European culture. So on one side you have a very self-determination position in which people will decide whether they want to open or not the access to their data versus the European culture where you have a concept more about dignity, where the government will protect people against themselves. So I think it's important to take that into consideration, knowing the asymmetrical power between one citizen versus a company or a government. So I wanted to understand what is the position or your position in terms of democratic representation within the Web 3.0. So how can we make sure to protect people and to try to solve asymmetrical situation of power in a context where everybody is free to do whatever they want, technically?
Well, you know, the thing is that I don't think we can solve for, with technology for some universal, you know, situation. So however each society decides to implement Web3, it should reflect the values of that society. So, for example, how we treat health data in the context of, you know, European Union versus how they might treat it in the context of the United States should reflect the values of the society. Similarly with CBDC, as we were talking about, you know, privacy is important in some societies. I was talking to somebody coming from the Caribbean. They were implementing a project in the Bahamas. Privacy was of no concern to them whatsoever. They were more concerned about controlling how that CBDC could be used. So the thing is, we do build values into our technology. So it's important when we are deploying the collectivities of technologies that implement Web3 that we're very conscious about already the values that have been built into these technologies as we receive them, and then the values that we are using to deploy those technologies. So it's a conversation that has to be had by the society as a whole. That's why we need to have, you know, consultations, and there needs to be, you know, like in the European Union, the Digital Services Act, and you know, various legislations that will support how a particular society agrees that this technology should be used and deployed. So I guess I can't give you I can acknowledge the root of your question, that different societies have different attitudes. Some extremely individualistic, some more collectivist, some more democratic, some more authoritarian. The technology will have to be deployed in those societies according to the will of, you know, whoever has the power. You know, in the context of Canada, you know, we have a democracy, and we have ways that we have discussions and make decisions about this, which is basically resolved to the rule of law at the end of the day. So we will need, you know, a new institutional infrastructure that's based on the rule of law to implement these technologies. Yeah.
So it's transforming very much complexity. Like it's a little bit against the concept of decentralization and a global system that everyone can use. But
I am right now against a global system that everyone can use, because I feel like two things there, which have to go back to something I care about deeply, which is fairness and justice. That I don't think we're ready as humanity to have a global system where, because you know, we can see right now in the moment that we're living in, where we have not got agreement as to, you know, what is right, what is wrong. You know, one group sees something as a heinous act, another group sees it as, you know, an expression of freedom, you know, without going into details and so on. We're not ready for one universal system, because what would we do with people we disagree with, right? So and when there's no universal way that we can resolve those disagreements. So we need diversity. So I think relying on the nation state as a kind of a basis, you know, the foundation, and evolving from the nation state what we need to go forward with this technology is a pretty good idea in my view. We've got a few centuries of experience with the nation state, and it provides us with a good architecture for evolving to a future state of existence through this technology, which hopefully we can deploy in a way that not only protects the human rights and the civil liberties that we currently have, but enhances them. But we need to be thoughtful in how we implement this technology.
If we can add a bit of nuance to that, where yes, I'm also the same. I'm just saying opinion. Sorry, I'm also the same opinion that like we're not there as a species yet to have like a global cover-all, do-all, say-all, see-all system. However, if we go back a few levels on certain aspects, we can do what's being done in other fields. Like if you look at ISO standards, ISO standards are true no matter which country you go in. Like it's a fact. It's like fact-based. That's what we're doing in say. I come from the civil engineering background. Like the way you do your concrete, I guess we're probably gonna have different mixes left and right, but like you can't have a concrete that is under say 40 MPa for like a slab. Again, don't quote me on my numbers. I haven't poured a concrete slab in a while. So I don't know what the new standards are, but like it's the same. Like it's physics. You can't go against physics. So if we take that into consideration and we look at which fields are fact, are true, no matter which country you go in, I think if we start with those and we build projects that are true in every country, no matter your background, your religion, your values, and then go from there, I think that's a good way to look at it. And there are already a lot of, just look at Bitcoin. It's true no matter where you go. It's either legal or illegal in certain countries, but no matter in which country or which religion or whatever you are, it is true. It is seen as a currency or as a store of value, or no matter how you perceive it, it's there. It's true. So I think if we build and look at projects that remain true or factual, and no matter the context, and build consensus from there, I think that could be.
But I have to disagree here that values are not easy to also quantify and provide some standards for. And this is like very difficult. Because values can well, if we implement in the protocol values and ethics, those are things that that does not have standard, and you can't even set a standard for, because they even change with time. So it's very, very complex to be able to put a norm for the whole world and put a standard for the whole world. And just because I think this is correct, everyone else should think that this is correct. I think having different opinions also and diversity, as you mentioned, is very important and very healthy in any system.
Well, definitely for things that are like politicized or like values or views or anything that's like human-based, if you will. I was talking more about like science, like factual things. Like if say we're gonna make I'm saying nonsense here, but we'll make a blockchain based on the solar system. Like, everybody knows that there's only a certain number of planets in the solar system. Well, I guess there's still a debate about Pluto, but
No, but I mean, even like the concept of money, like for example, how money distributed, how the heritage is distributed, how those are like managed by many. I mean, there is many systems that can control this. Social systems, religion can control this. Norms can control this. Ethical behavior and ethical standards. So it's even money. It's not just. It's not physical. It does not follow, I think, the physics laws. It's a human. The concept of money is a human created. Like it's what's money? Why this is have value? It's something that debatable by itself, right?
Sure.
It's a story we.
Even scientific facts can be
Can be debated, yeah,
shaped
of
by
course, and change
social
over time.
reality.
Yeah.
For many centuries, we thought that the sun revolved around the earth, for example. You know, the things that we know today and accept as true belief may not be the things we accept as true belief going forward. So, and many philosophers have, like Bourdieu and other philosophers have written about how social things influence what come to be hard facts. So, you know, and if we look at indigenous ontologies, you know, they don't accept this distance between, you know, hard physical scientific reality and, you know, so the thing is we can't even agree on our ontologies and our epistemologies. So we need diversity because we need to work out all of these things and then come as a group, as a people who want to be together and form a society, to say, okay, this is how we're going to operate ourselves. Yeah.
Okay. Any more question, or are we out of time? Yeah. Okay. Thanks everyone. Thanks for participating.